Thank you. The final item of business this evening is a members' business debate on motion 16705 in the name of Tess White on addressing sexual violence in Scotland's hospitals. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would invite those members who would wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons, and I call on Tess White to open the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the opportunity to lead this members' business debate on sexual violence in Scotland's hospitals. I'd like to also thank Michelle Thompson for supporting the motion and allowing it to achieve cross-party support. It means that we can shine a much-needed light on a serious safeguarding issue in Scotland's NHS. And I'd also like to pay tribute to the Women's Rights Network Scotland who are here today in the gallery, especially Mary Howden and Carolyn Brown, who authored the sobering report, and I have it here, How Safe Are Our Scottish Hospitals? Once again, it is a grassroots women's organisation bringing concerns over safety and safeguarding in Scotland's public sector to the fore. The Sunday Post has built on this work in recent weeks, exposing the issue and holding the SNP government to account. Presiding Officer, the WRN submitted close to 200 FOIs to Police Scotland and surveyed 198 hospital settings over a 5-year period. Data was only made available for 57 of those hospitals, and that's just 29% of Scotland's total. It showed that between 2019 and 2024, 276 sexual assaults and 12 rapes were reported. 163 sexual assaults and rapes occurred on hospital wards. 22 sexual assaults and 1 rape took place in NHS Grampian in my region. 17 sexual assaults and 3 rapes took place in NHS Tayside. Out of 288 total incidents, only 156 individuals were charged. These are spine-chilling figures. And by no means is this a complete picture. We do not have the data for almost 2/3 of Scotland's NHS and private hospitals. Underreporting and lack of data management mean we simply don't know the full scale of the problem. We can all agree that even 1 sexual assault in our NHS is too many. Presiding Officer, whether it's to receive medical care ourselves or to visit a poorly loved one, we are often at our most vulnerable when we enter a hospital. We are placing our physical and psychological safety in the hands of health boards and NHS staff. We are entrusting our children and our family to their care. We must be able to do so without fear. But staff too are vulnerable. Members will recall the shocking revelations in autumn 2023 about female surgeons being sexually assaulted and harassed by male colleagues in the operating theatre. The safety of patients, visitors and staff must be the SNP government's top priority when it comes to the NHS. And I was extremely concerned to learn that some women are afraid to seek treatment because of the potential risk to their safety. I hope the Minister, in closing, will address this today. Earlier this year, I raised Carsview Psychiatric Unit in NHS Tayside with the First Minister, earlier this year, which has mixed-sex wards. The WRN's research suggests that 7 sexual assaults and 2 rapes took place in this so-called secure psychiatric setting. One of my constituents received treatment in Carsview for postpartum psychosis following the birth of her second baby. At the most vulnerable point in her life, I understand she was repeatedly subjected to another patient exposing himself. She was terrified and traumatized, separated from her support network and scared for her safety on a mixed-sex ward. How can this be? Where was the duty of care? for women giving birth or accessing support for serious mental ill health or learning disabilities, safeguarding has to be of paramount importance. The Equalities Committee recently heard evidence that 90% of women with learning difficulties and disabilities have been subjected to sexual abuse, with 68%, that's 68%, experiencing sexual abuse before turning 18. Women have been raped or sexually assaulted at Scottish maternity hospitals on at least 5 different occasions, and one of those rapes was reported at Aberdeen Maternity Hospital. In other psychiatric units and palliative settings, sexual assaults have been reported as well. Presiding officer, this can't go on. We must see urgent action from the SNP government, health boards, NHS partners, Police Scotland to allay the concerns of women and girls. But what is the way ahead? I often say that you can't manage what you can't measure. I understand that Healthcare Improvement Scotland is working to standardise the reporting of incidents, and that is to be welcomed, but we need details from the Scottish Government of how this will operate in practice. To address the risks and weaknesses and to put preventative policies in place, we need to see the data. There is a wider issue over mixed-sex wards. Protecting single-sex spaces in our public sector should be at the top of the policy agenda, and I've had rigorous exchanges with SNP ministers on this issue. But since 2005, the Scottish Government has expected health boards to ensure that their facilities comply with the guidelines and recommendations on the elimination of mixed-sex accommodation published 25 years ago. This just isn't happening on the ground, and I think that's evident from the data, Presiding Officer. Our hospitals must be safe for those people, especially women and children, accessing these settings. The SNP government must act swiftly to address sexual violence in Scotland's hospitals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms White. Could I just say to our visitors in the gallery, who are all most welcome to the Parliament, that we don't have clapping in the gallery because we are participants in this process, but you're very welcome indeed to be observing this process from the gallery. Thank you for your cooperation. And I now call Alexander Stewart to be followed by Claire Baker. Mr Stewart, up to 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm very pleased to be able to contribute to this evening's debate, and I'd like to congratulate and thank my colleague Tess White for bringing this very important issue to the Chamber this evening. And I'd also like to congratulate Mary Howden and Callum Brown for publishing this report. The start point of this, as we've heard already, is that between 2019 and 2024, 276 sexual assaults, 23 rapes took place in 57 hospitals in Scotland. They include 11 cases of sexual assault in NHS Forth Valley, 34 in NHS Fife and 17 in NHS Tayside, and they all fall within my own region, Presiding Officer. However, the Women's Rights Network report points out these incidents are just ones that we know about. There are many that we do not know about, and the debate has to be in a wider context when we talk about the threat to single-sex spaces and the need to protect these spaces in settings such as hospitals. It is an issue we will continue to highlight in this chamber, and even if the government would not rather debate it and discuss it, we will continue to do that. Presiding Officer, one of my biggest issues with sexual violence in hospitals is the lack of reporting. The Women's Rights Network report reveals that data of sexual assault is not routinely kept by NHS boards or by Police Scotland. The report sets out that 67% of hospitals simply did not collect the data, and a further 4% refused under the grounds of privacy grounds. This means that many of these institutions are unanswered. So what is the true extent of this issue in our health boards across Scotland? What procedures and what guidance is in place for Police Scotland to deal with these incidents? The report also concludes that it found that no evidence of a coherent data-keeping system was kept, and that the recording data of sexual assaults has to improve, and that should be the case. It has to improve. We need to ensure that there's robust transparency when it comes to this within our hospitals. The report rightly calls for these measures to be introduced. However, several reports from the Care Quality Commission have already made the same recommendations, only to be ignored. Only to be ignored, Presiding Officer. I wonder how many more incidents it will take to force the Scottish Government to take issues and action on this issue seriously. As well as the improving of records, we must ensure that safeguarding measures are put in place, and these are transparent for patients in hospitals. Presiding Officer, regardless of the law surrounding the issue, the proven track record of this is complex. We understand that, but we need to see urgent action taking to the scourge of violence, sexual violence in Scotland's hospital. It is time for this denial to stop and for information to be clarified. My party will continually represent the leadership and the drive to get some direction here and to ensure that the public sector organisations and health boards have that. The directive should require them to have a proven prepare for single-sex spaces on biological women and girls. That should be the minimum we're looking at. In most cases, this was simply reminding organisations of their legal obligation. Something even the First Minister has accepted is crystal clear. So in conclusion, Presiding Officer, women and girls deserve nothing less than a clear, common-sense approach when it comes to hospital safety. I urge the Scottish Government to see the data and ensure that that data comes forward and we take action to ensure that that's required. Hospitals should be a safe place for treatment and not an environment for sexual violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. And I now call Claire Baker to be followed by Sharon Dowie. Ms Baker, up to 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I want to thank Tess White for securing a members' debate on the research which has been undertaken by the Women's Research Network into safety in hospitals. I was able to highlight this research in a debate last week, and I have previously raised the report at First Minister's questions. I felt the response received on that occasion could have been more expansive, and I hope that the Minister is able to engage more fully with the topic this evening. I want to thank the Women's Research Network for their work exposing the levels of sexual assaults and rapes in our hospitals. It was not an easy task. It was laborious, as at first the figures weren't available, but they did persist. By identifying the number of rapes and sexual assaults taking place in hospitals in Scotland through FOIs, they have highlighted the extent of the problem, and the figures are shocking. Almost 250 sexual assaults and rapes have taken place in Scottish hospitals over the last 5 years. 163 of these rapes and sexual assaults happened on hospital wards, though it is important to say we don't know if these are single-sex or mixed-sex wards. The figures from Police Scotland are more shocking when you find out they only came from 57 of the 198 hospitals in Scotland. If we take into account that this includes pandemic years where the hospital population was reduced and visitors were heavily restricted, it is clear that these figures are likely to reflect underreporting, not just because these offences are often underreported across society. As well as shining a light on these horrendous crimes, the report highlights the areas where there is a lack of information, and that makes it more challenging to provide a policy response. Presiding Officer, patients in hospital are vulnerable, frail and dependent on others for meeting their needs. At times they will be unconscious or disorientated. They are often in a state of undress and they are in unfamiliar surroundings. We know the pressure our hospitals are under. In Fife, we regularly have ambulances waiting outside A&E as they can't admit people, and through flow is at times impossible as there is a lack of suitable beds. The recent report from the Royal College of Nursing describes a collapse in care standards across Scotland's hospitals, with increasing reports of corridor care, leaving people in very vulnerable and undignified settings. All these conditions could lead to opportunistic attacks. The limited information that the Women's Research Network were able to obtain leaves many unanswered questions. When we're thinking about how to respond, how to improve safeguarding and security, there are so many uncertainties. It is not certain whether assaults were carried out by other patients or staff, or if they were carried out on patients or staff, though the high number on a hospital ward suggests that patients are often the victim. Most concerning was that the research found assaults were not routinely recorded. it would appear that sometimes they are underplayed or minimised as if the setting excuses some behaviours, and that is reflected in 133 hospitals not holding the data. The First Minister was right when he said that all sexual assaults are against the law and they should be immediately reported to the police. This is similar to the statements from NHS boards who say that when incidents are reported, they are encouraged to report to the police. However, I don't think these responses sufficiently reflect on the significance of the location and our responsibility to the NHS patients and staff. There is little examination of these figures, little understanding why Stop Hill, the Royal Infirmary and private hospital Signet Wallace have the highest rates, and why women should accept being at a greater risk in psychiatric hospitals. There is scant evidence of the figures being taken seriously as a collective issue by NHS boards or government. There is no piece of work which asks why this is happening in hospitals and what steps will be taken to prevent further rapes and assaults. The report from the Women's Rights Network makes a number of recommendations that I urge the Scottish Government and NHS boards to consider how to make progress on, including steps to minimise the risk of sexual assault, to maintain accurate recording of incidents and make greater progress on single-sex wards in all settings. We must not ignore this research and we must see action. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Baker. I now call Sharon Dowie to be followed by Jackie Bailey. Ms Dowie, up to 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I thank Tess White for bringing this debate to the Chamber. I'd like to focus my comments on the first line of today's motion, that the Parliament considers that single-sex spaces for women and girls across Scotland's public services are being eroded with worrying implications for their rights and safety. The issue of protecting single-sex spaces for women is being spoken about everywhere. It's talked about in the streets, at the school gates, in the pubs, in the media on a daily basis, and now even in the legal system with the ongoing case of brave Fife nurse Sandy Peggy. Today I want to talk about 3 specific areas where the Scottish Government's abject failure to protect single-sex spaces for women is being felt most painfully. In schools, not all secondaries provide suitable single-sex toilets in Scotland in 2024. Forcing young girls to share facilities with teenage boys is utterly shameful, a position which most parents cannot believe we've got ourselves into. We know from evidence provided to us by girls that this is making them scared to use the bathrooms at schools, causing them to miss lessons, or perhaps not even turn up at school at all. It may be an uncomfortable issue for this government to think about, but when a girl is going through her early teenage years, it is an incredibly difficult time for her, as all females across this chamber are well aware. The idea that a schoolgirl should have to go through things like beginning their monthly periods while pushing past boys to get into a small cubicle, which leaves a gap at the top of the door and is only separated from those boys by a door 1/4 of an inch thick, is utterly inhumane. The First Minister must drop the hesitation and the placating of various fringe groups and issue a simple order that all secondary schools and public services must provide suitable, separate, single-sex toilets for girls as a matter of utmost urgency. Presiding Officer, we know the younger members of society are being affected by this issue, and so too are the most vulnerable. The situation in women's prisons is beyond a joke. We have well-documented cases which have made Scotland a global laughingstock, from double rapists putting on blonde wigs to gain a place in a female prison, to male inmates having state-facilitated surgery to shave down an Adam's apple. These examples would be comical if they were not so deadly serious. This Parliament hears a lot about how vulnerability of women's prisoners and how so many of them have endured violent sexual and physical abuse at the hands of men. And when these accounts are shared, the Scottish Government nods its head in sympathy, but at the same time does little to keep them safe from predatory males inside prison walls. And from recent media reports, this now includes female visitors visiting male prisons where they are subjected to searches conducted by male-bodied trans women. And then we have the examples of police. Earlier this month, a leading lawyer warned that Police Scotland could run into the same difficulties facing NHS Fife. She said that female police officers, for obvious reasons, didn't want to share changing facilities with men. but they were also likely to be too scared to raise it, fearful of an employment tribunal, suspension or an end to what could otherwise be a strong and successful career. All at the altar of a dangerous gender ideology designed by this SNP government and pandered to by everyone else except the Scottish Conservatives. Presiding Officer, I hope everyone in this chamber can get behind Tess White's motion today, but I especially hope female members do. We have a particular duty to women and girls across Scotland, and we must stand up for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Dowie. I now call Jackie Bailey to be followed by Ash Regan. Up to 4 minutes, please, Ms Bailey.
Can I start by thanking Tess White for bringing this members' debate to the Chamber this evening. I had the opportunity to attend the event in Parliament a few weeks ago that she sponsored, where the Women's Research Network presented their findings to MSPs and guests, and I have to say that their findings were profoundly shocking. It's beyond question that our hospitals should be places where patients and staff alike know that they will be kept safe and treated with dignity. And as Tess White referenced, the report tells us that of the 288 sexual assaults and rapes recorded in Scottish hospitals in the past 5 years, more than half of them occurred on a hospital ward. The surroundings where these assaults took place included a children's hospital, 2 maternity hospitals and a palliative care hospital. And shockingly, as we've already heard, Police Scotland could only give details of 29% of cases, so that the real number of sexual assaults will be far higher but go unreported. The opportunity to commit sexual assaults, I believe, will be increased because we still have mixed-sex wards. For 20 years now, first Scottish Labour and then SNP administrations have required health boards to eliminate mixed-sex accommodation in our hospitals. Yet in 2024, only 2 health board areas, Dumfries and Galloway and Orkney, confirmed that they offered single-sex accommodation across all of their wards. The remaining 12 health boards which replied offered mixed-sex accommodation in at least some of their wards, a far cry from the pledge by the SNP. And I wonder whether the Minister now, or in her summing up, can tell me whether that situation has improved at all. If the SNP government had kept to its promise, we might not have the level of abuse that goes on in our hospitals today. How disappointing it is that women are let down, that even when the government commit to a clear principle, it simply fails to deliver in practice. So will the government commit to urgently working with health boards and Police Scotland to investigate the circumstances of these assaults, including whether they happened on mixed-sex wards? Will they ensure that there is more accurate recording and reporting in the NHS of sexual crimes as we go forward into the future? And what action will be taken to prevent these assaults from happening in the first place? This report demonstrates that our hospitals are not as safe as they should be. The reality is that too often women are stuck not even in mixed-sex wards, but actually in corridors. Most of you are aware of the recent report from the Royal College of Nursing, in which one Scottish nurse described having to use privacy screens around patients so that they could use the bedpan. As the director of the Royal College of Nursing Scotland said, and I couldn't agree more with these comments, this is completely unacceptable for patient safety and staff well-being. So, Presiding Officer, all that remains for me to ask is, will the SNP government live up to its long-standing pledge to end mixed-sex wards, or will we be here in a year's time with yet another report of increased numbers of women experiencing assaults in NHS Scotland?
Thank you, Ms Bailey. I now call Ash Regan to be followed by Carol Mockin. Up to 4 minutes, please, Ms Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I congratulate Tess White on bringing today's important debate, and also Women's Rights Network for their report. Now, observers to this chamber and to some of our committees over the past months may conclude that sex realists are from Venus and gender ideologists are from Mars, such as the difference between the two positions. So I'm going to seek to bring some clarity here now, where confusion has been reigning across all levels of the government and indeed in our public sector. So if I start with the purpose and the effect of the Equality Act of 2010, its purpose is to balance rights across the 9 protected characteristics, but these rights are not hierarchical, as some people seem to believe that they are. And its effect is to protect individuals from discrimination, harassment and victimisation based on those protected characteristics. The purpose of the workplace regulations of 1992 is to ensure the health, safety, welfare, privacy and dignity of employees. And its effect is to ensure employees are provided with legally compliant welfare facilities, including single-sex toilets, changing rooms and washing facilities. And the certainty of protections provided by HSE regulations and the EQA of 2010 cannot be overridden by internal policies. And equality impact assessments are not nice-to-haves. Now, let me burst some myths. The case-by-case confusion that the government seems to be under at the moment. Public bodies and the government appear to think that access to single-sex provision must be decided on an individual case-by-case basis, and that blanket policies that exclude all males from female-only spaces are unlawful. This is wrong. Blanket policies that exclude all males, regardless of how they identify, are lawful. And the fairness of a policy must be assessed not on the fairness of its application to individuals, but on the application of the policy. So it's critical to understand sex-based safeguarding is a result of the risk of mixed-sex access in vulnerable situations, and the consequences of women from the risk of access by any males into female-only spaces, be it prisons, be it hospital wards, changing rooms and toilets, removes that sex-based safeguarding. So allowing the introduction of risk by removing the assurance of single-sex spaces is a dereliction of governance and a failure of women. Now, data is also critical to good governance, and there are clear obligations on this as well under the law. The Istanbul Convention requires state parties to collect data on all forms of violence against women. As a minimum requirement, recorded data on victims and perpetrators should be disaggregated by sex, by age, type of violence, as well as the relationship of the perpetrator to the victim and the geographical location. So for hospitals and other public bodies to fail to collect this data on forms of violence against women is a breach of international obligations and a failure of women by the state. The government must get a grip on this outrageous situation and demonstrate that Scotland values and will protect women and girls' safety, privacy and dignity, and quite frankly, we expect nothing less.
Thank you, Ms Regan. And I call Karen Mockin. Up to 4 minutes, please, Ms Mock.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I thank Tess White for bringing this debate to the Chamber, and I welcome the contributions from other members before me on this really important matter. I just want to make a short contribution following on from questions I have asked the Cabinet Secretary and the Minister around provision of single-sex toilets. Now, for context, as others have said, single-sex spaces based on biological sex are protected under the Equality Act 2020. Women and girls have a right to feel safe in our public buildings, in schools and in hospitals, and they are often in these places at their most vulnerable, and because they require to attend these places. So we have a responsibility in government to make sure these places are safe and comply with the law. We have heard recently about patients in corridors and on the strain on the NHS. So on top of this, you can see why people are asking for government to engage with us when we see this How Safe Are Scottish Hospitals reports. And I think that we all can agree that these are particularly worrying findings. For 20 years now, of course, Scottish Labour and now the SNP administration have required health boards to eliminate mixed-sex accommodations in hospital. But as my colleague Jackie Bailey indicated, at the moment we think there are only 2 health boards who comply with that, NHS Dumfries and Galloway and NHS Orkney. This is unacceptable, and I believe the government must take some responsibility for this. And so I agree with my colleague Claire Bacon and others that have said that the government needs to have more engagement with us on these matters so that we can get the proper information that is required. But going back to my questions, it is on this point about engaging. So I asked 3 separate questions, one in the chamber to the Cabinet Secretary, and then 2 written questions around the provision of single-sex toilets. On all answers, I feel that the government really were unable to give me full answers about the way in which they were ensuring that the laws were being applied here in Scotland. And so I feel that it is important for the government to take that responsibilities. The question I asked in the chamber, the Cabinet Secretary's response was, I say once again that those regulations are also included in the government's belief that all public bodies should fulfil their obligations under all pieces of legislation with reference to this issue. So if the Cabinet Secretary is saying it's a belief, then I think possibly they should be doing more. So I really want to end my contribution there and just ask the Minister if they can give us some assurance that they will take some responsibility and look to assess the current situation in our NHS and in other organisations, particularly where the government provides public funds to those organisations. Getting that information should not be difficult, but I do think is essential. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Ms Mockin. And I call Rachel Hamilton. Up to 4 minutes, please, Ms Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I won't take much time. I just decided after hearing what I'm hearing from my colleagues today to say a few words, and I just wanted to thank the Women's Rights Network today. And I also was at the event, and it was quite shocking and stark. I'm not sure if either of the Minister or the Cabinet Secretary were at the event, but and I hope they have read this report, which is incredibly shocking, as others have said. But I don't think that the government can continue to obfuscate over this particular issue, over the protection of women and girls. They've quoted the Equality Act ad verbatim, and we know that it's already set out in the workplace regulations, as Ash Regan has talked about. Minister, the public are losing patience and they're losing trust in the Scottish Government's ability to protect women and girls, I'm afraid to say. And as part of this report, the Women's Health Plan, which we fly high, you know, we are very proud to talk about the Women's Health Plan and the work that is going on in that. But as with some of the other targets that the SNP have set, they say that the priority is to reduce inequalities in outcomes for women's general health. But if we look at the content of this report, we know that the Scottish Government are adopting a policy of self-ID. We didn't pass the Gender Recognition Reform Bill, but we seem to have seeped this into the minds and the guidance that's been produced in all public organisations. And it is damaging, and it's led to sexual assaults and rapes in hospital, which is absolutely disgraceful. We don't even have the clear data on it because Police Scotland, as Sharon has said, are not collecting the data. They're not collecting data on sex. They're not collecting data on age. The hospitals aren't collecting data. Nobody knows the true extent of the damage this is doing. So how can we reduce inequalities, Minister? This is absolutely shameful. How can we protect women? It is absolutely right that I hope you will take, and the Scottish Government will take, this report absolutely 100% seriously, and once and for all, a Cabinet Secretary and a Minister could come to this chamber and answer the questions that all of us have been asking for weeks on end without a result. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Hamilton. And I now call on Minister Jenny Minto to respond to the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please, Minister.
Great. Thank you, Presiding Officer. Everyone who has spoken today recognises that violence against women and girls is abhorrent and unacceptable. And this is the case within our hospital estate, as it is within every part of our society. Shocking and depressing that there remains violence, including sexual violence, at the hands of men wherever women live and work. And I agree with what Tess White said in her opening speech, that one attack in a hospital or anywhere is one too many. Such violence has a profound, long-lasting and devastating impact on the lives of women and girls and those around them too. It damages health and well-being, limits freedom and potential, and is a fundamental violation of human rights. In my office, I have a 16 Days Against Violence Against Women candle in my office, so it is something that I see every day and something I am very understanding and supportive of. And although I haven't read the entirety of the report, I have read some of the summaries of it, and it is shocking. We are, I think, together united in our recognition that the drivers for violence against women and girls are firmly anchored in the behaviour of men. It is men who must accept that they need to do much more to deliver the culture and national change necessary to remove this stain that remains with us. As the First Minister said during the 16 Days debate last year, men must take up the challenge about being a better guy and reflect on their own behaviour. Violence against women and girls is and always will be an issue that this government takes seriously. That is reflected in partnership with COSLA through Equally Safe, Scotland's strategy to prevent and eradicate violence against women. Equally Safe sets out a vision of a strong and flourishing country where all individuals are safe and respected, and where women and girls live free from all forms of violence and abuse, as well as the attitudes that perpetuate it. It works to prevent violence. It works to prevent violence from occurring in the first place, to build and sustain the capability and capacity of support services and strengthen the justice response to victims and perpetrators. Now, a number of people have commented on single-sex space for women in hospitals, and Jackie Bailey is correct that since 2005 we have expected NHS boards to ensure their facilities comply with guidelines on the elimination of mixed-sex accommodation. And in all new hospital developments, there should be a presumption of 100% single rooms, and where existing accommodation is being refurbished, as close to 100% as possible is... I'm just going to continue, Tess White, if you don't know. There are limited exceptions for areas such as intensive care units. Within our hospitals, a number of health boards are participating in the Equally Safe at Work employer accreditation programme. Alongside our commitment to Equally Safe, NHS Once for Scotland policies on gender-based violence and sexual harassment, I'm just going to continue if you don't mind, are due to be published soon, providing a standardised approach for all health boards. We're also working with the Royal College of Surgeons, Edinburgh, to roll out their Let's Remove It campaign, which is designated to raise awareness of sexual misconduct. Further, we've been working with Police Scotland and other parties on Your Safety Matters campaign, tackling violence and aggression across our frontline services. In addition to this, supporting survivors is key, and to support victims and change attitudes, we're providing more than £5.3 million to rape crisis centres through our Delivering Equally Safe Fund, and we've taken a robust action to tackle sexual offending, encouraging more victims to come forward, improving support and modernising the law on sexual offences. It's vital that we progress our vision for justice and deliver a truly person-centred and trauma-informed system through the Victims, Witnesses and Criminal Justice Bill. The Minister for Equality has recently announced a £2.4 million increase to the Delivering Equally Safe Fund for 25-26, and this will allow all funding recipients to continue the vital work they undertake to prevent violence and support survivors of violence against women and girls. Stopping violence against women and girls before it occurs must be central to our collective efforts. To do this, we must tackle the root cause of the problem. I'm just going to continue. Happy to take your intervention. Claire Baker.
Thank you very much. It's just with the Minister, when we're talking about hospitals, we know that, and the Minister will know this, that rapes against women, in 6 out of 7 cases, it's someone they know that carries out that offence. But in a hospital, you would surmise that it might be more opportunistic and a stranger that's carried out the crime, and whether this is an area the government will look at and examine, give more examination to the figures that we have in the public domain.
Minister.
I thank Claire Baker for that intervention, and I agree we have to look at the data and collect more, and that's why we are continuing to work with Healthcare Improvement Scotland to improve the recording and reporting. So I hope that gives some comfort to Ms Baker. Stopping violence against women and girls before it occurs must be central to our collective efforts. To do this, we must tackle the root cause of the problem, which I said was gender inequality. And women's inequality is both a cause and consequence of violence against women, which is why Equally Safe emphasises the importance of primary prevention, focusing on the structures, systems, policies and assumptions that we live within. And also, we, as well as Healthcare Improvement Scotland, we're also working closely with Police Scotland on the reporting of sexual crimes and through our partnership group, Your Safety Matters. I'm just concluding. Presiding officer, it is through addressing the fundamental causes of violence against women and girls that we can effectively respond to this critical issue. Hospitals should be a place of safety for patients and staff, and their safety is paramount. Assaults on patients or staff are abhorrent, and all instances of violent behaviour, including sexual assaults, should be reported and escalated to the police as quickly as possible. I've listened to what many people have said today during this debate, and two things I would like to comment on. Tomorrow morning, I meet with Professor Anna Glazier, Scotland's wonderful women's health champion, and I will take the discussion from this debate to her to have a further conversation with her. And I would also be content to engage with other members that have taken part in this debate, because I think it's important that we have a cross-party solution to this and how we work better with our health boards. As violence against women reflects, I believe, the worst aspects of our society, and we must do more to ensure that women and girls are safe, feel safe and are respected. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the debate, and I close this meeting.